Let's
go to the financial.
It was my privilege to join with the junior senator from Florida in introducing a bill today to try to bring low and middle income. Can we start again? It was my privilege to introduce with the junior senator from Florida, Senator Smathers, a bill to bring low income and moderate income housing to the ghetto areas of the large cities of the United States. Private enterprise builds nearly all of our housing today, but the one area in which private enterprise has not played a full part has been in the area of its greatest need, the construction of low and moderate income housing in the center city and the rehabilitation of the slums which scar its face. It is in these areas that the government programs have also been a failure. The purpose of this bill is to enlist the energies and the resources of the private enterprise system in this great remaining task, which is housing, the need for housing, the construction of housing, the rehabilitation of housing in our ghetto areas.
Senator,
Could
is
Senator
this...
Smathers
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead.
why don't you make us...
I think the genius of this bill is that it attracts large companies who have talent and money, experience into a field which they heretofore have not been into, and that is the construction of housing. And certainly, as Senator Kennedy has so well pointed out, there is this enormous need for housing for low-income people, and particularly in the ghettos and the slum areas of our country. This is the first time that I've ever seen a bill or a proposal which would give reason for big companies with this money and the talent to get into this construction business. I'm satisfied that if we can adopt it, it will go a long ways toward meeting the needs of housing for our ghettos and our slums.
Senator, these are two massive programs that you've now introduced in the past 2 days on questions that should probably be dealt with by the administration with all its resources. Why is it that you think that the administration has not come out with bills?
Well, I think that they've been considering these matters, and I'm sure that they will have some recommendations and suggestions as we move along through the year. I think we in the legislative branch of the government also have our responsibilities. This has been an area that's been of interest to Senator Smathers, and the legislation that we introduced yesterday has been an area that's been of interest to a number of the members of the United States Senate. So as we have our concurrent responsibility with the executive branch of the government, we expect to meet that by making any recommendations or suggestions that we might. This is the number one problem that we're facing in this country at the moment, and I think we all have a responsibility and all have this obligation to try to deal with it and meet it. And that's not just those in the executive branch of the government, but those of us in the legislative branch of the government as well.
Have you gone over this legislation with the administration, and do you expect administration support?
Well, I think that they'll have to speak for themselves. The legislation has been furnished to the executive branch of the government, and I have obtained their comments and suggestions, a number of which were very helpful.
Have you been encouraged to go ahead with the introduction of these bills?
Well, as I say, I think that they can speak for themselves, and I wouldn't want to do so.
Senator, to what extent are you underwriting a profit for private enterprise in here by offering such things? As I understand the bill, would it not offer 2% interest, et cetera, on money that we, in quite many instances, pay 4 3/4% to get and then loan it for 2%? Are you, in effect, underwriting a profit for private enterprise?
Could I answer that? To some extent, we are subsidizing the program, but this is the manner in which we are going to be able to get private enterprise to come into this field. Heretofore, they have not gone into the field for the very practical reason that private enterprise has to show a profit. And this is a field where it's very unusual to be able to get a profit, if at all. So this is the whole idea. The government, however, it will only cost the government in the neighborhood of some $3 to $4 billion over a period of 50 years. However, a private company could make for itself, in effect, a sizable profit if they already have a surplus of profit by getting into the construction business for this type of housing and then taking advantage of the benefits which are offered by this bill. That's the whole purpose of it, is to get them into this field.
Well, Senator, maybe what I am getting at is just how does this balance up on the profit and loss sheet when you tear down ghetto property? Is it producing any tax now? What are you losing? And you loan money at 2%. How are you coming out there to the figure that you gave us over a 50-year period?
The way that this will balance itself out and actually be a great benefit to the nation is that we know what crime's costing us today. We know what the slum conditions already cost us. We know that you cannot, either the city nor the county nor the state, collect any taxes off this type of non-productive property. So the way that it finally ends up a plus factor for the nation is that by encouraging business to get into this particular field and giving them a profit, in time the social conditions are improved, our crime rate is not as high nor as expensive, the property values go up, the productive capacity of the individuals is greater, so in the net, long range, it's a great plus factor for the nation.
Senator Kennedy, as you know, the top 200 corporations in this country are not currently involved in this field. What assurances do you have that this program that you and Senator Smathers have offered will bring these corporations that are not now involved into the field?
Well, over the period of some months, we've reviewed this legislation with representatives of investment firms and large corporations across the United States, received their suggestions and recommendations, many of which have been incorporated into the legislation, and we have been encouraged to believe that if this legislation is passed, there will be considerable investment in the ghettos by some of our large companies.
Senator Kennedy, to what degree does this approach complement, extend, or differ with the administration's war on poverty?
Well, it's the Office of Economic Opportunity has used companies and corporations and some of the private enterprise system. But in our efforts to deal with housing and efforts to deal with investment in the ghettos, we have not called upon the energy and the talent and the financial resources that exist in the private enterprise system. This is an effort to bring about a change so that it's not just the government agencies, it's not just the federal government in Washington, it's not just the local government that's trying to deal with this problem, but it's an effort to try to bring the private enterprise system into an active partnership with the government to try to deal with the slum problem.
Senator, aren't you going?
That this approach might be acceptable to President Johnson?
Well, I'm hopeful that it will be. I am hopeful that it will be acceptable to the Congress of the United States and it will be enacted into legislation.
Senator, you have researched with business the possibility of private enterprise getting into this House building. What do you have in the way of research to indicate whether or not the people in the ghettos themselves are going to have any money to buy these houses once they are there? It seems that most that we hear that they are on a poverty level where they can't buy food now.
That's the attractiveness of this legislation, which I think makes it unique from other legislation that's been suggested or recommended. This will provide family units for $70 to $100 a month, and from $67 to $100 a month. The most expensive will be $100 a month, and this therefore will be available for those who have the incomes of $3,000 to $6,000.
Aren't you going a step further than the usual proposals for the ghetto areas, though, when you recommend the building under this plan of middle-income housing?
Well, what we want to escape from is just the fact that people move into a housing unit and then their income goes up and they have to move out. They get a better job, or they provide some leadership, demonstrate some leadership ability, and then they're moved out of the housing unit. What we are trying to provide for is that those people can remain there, but that their rent will increase, not dollar for dollar, but will increase some, and that's the purpose of this. As I say, it's the first time, really, that the private enterprise system has been involved in low-income, moderate-income housing. It's the first time the private enterprise system will have been brought into the ghetto in a major way. And it will provide low income. It will provide incomes for low income people. It'll provide housing for low income people in the ghetto area, and that has not yet been done.
Have you canvassed support in the Senate?
We've talked to a number of people, and we think that with Senator Smathers' leadership, that
We're optimistic. We're optimistic. We think everybody wants to answer the problem of the ghettos. This is the best way to do it.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
sir.
George. That was great.
Thank you.
Senator, is your proposal designed as an Senator, would your bill actually be an extension of the war on poverty? Well, in effect, are you trying to underwrite a profit for private enterprise? Well, you offer to loan money at the rate of 2% when the government borrows at 4.75%. Is this not an underwriting of profit? Well, Senator, what research do you have to indicate that the people in the ghettos could buy these houses once they're built? They are on starvation existence now. Well, aren't you going one step further, however, when you suggest that we build middle-class housing?